Peace be upon you and welcome to a new episode. It was 1:15 after midnight in a village in Giza Governorate. Inside one of the houses on the second floor, there was a young groom named Ahmed sleeping in his bed next to his new wife. At exactly 1:30, terrifying screams erupted from that apartment. The screams of a woman crying for help, calling on people to save her. Hussein, Ahmed's brother, who lived on the first floor, woke up in terror and ran up the stairs quickly. When he reached the second floor, he found the door open and saw his brother's wife tied up with a rope, her head injured, crying and screaming. Hussein rushed into the bedroom, and the sight he saw was more horrific than any nightmare. His brother Ahmed was lying on the floor in a pool of blood. His body was covered in stab wounds from every direction in his chest, his neck, and his back. Blood was spread across the floor, the walls, the bed, everywhere. It was clear that whoever did this didn't just want to kill him, but wanted to erase this man from existence. Warda was still screaming, saying that people had broken into the apartment, assaulted her, tied her up, and stolen her gold and her phone. She said she heard her husband fighting with them. And then his voice suddenly disappeared. She claimed that these people were from the village of Arab Gamaza, the village that had a blood feud and major conflicts with their village, Arab Al-Hisar, just a few days earlier. Despite the shock of the scene, the detectives had doubts from the very first minute. Many things in the story didn't make sense, and those doubts would lead them to a truth far more horrific than any act of revenge or robbery. Before we begin our story, don't forget to like and share the episode so it can reach as many people as possible. And wait for me every Saturday, Monday, and Wednesday in a new episode. And without going into too many details, let's dive into the depths of our story. The story began in early 2006 in the Bulak El Dakro area in Giza. A very respectable family lived there known as the Adel Sam family. A family well known for decency and respect. They had only one daughter named Warda. At that time, Warda was in her early 17th year. She was a beautiful girl with an attractive appearance, and all the young men in the neighborhood noticed her. But Warda had her eyes on only one young man, a man named Muhammad Hassan Mahmoud. He was 20 years old and worked at a cafe in the same area. Muhammad was their neighbor and lived almost on the same street. It all started with glances. Those glances increased, then turned into gentle smiles. Little by little, the relationship began to develop. By mid-2006, Warda and Muhammad were in a completely secret romantic relationship. It was hidden from the eyes of family and neighbors, because Muhammad knew very well that Warda's family would never approve of someone like him. He was just a cafe worker with a very limited income, difficult financial circumstances, and no clear future ahead of him. But Warda didn't care about any of that. She was deeply in love. She dreamed that one day Muhammad would come, propose to her, get engaged to her, and marry her. Muhammad always told her that he wasn't financially ready yet, that he needed to work and save money first, and then he would come to propose to her officially. Warda believed him. She was waiting for that day with great anticipation. But the bitter truth that Warda didn't want to admit was that Muhammad never intended to marry her in the first place. He wanted only one thing: to enjoy a relationship with her without any responsibility or commitment. He was someone who knew very well that he was exploiting a young girl with little life experience. As time passed, the relationship between Warda and Muhammad developed into something bigger and more dangerous. By the end of 2006, their relationship had become fully physical. Warda gave herself completely to Muhammad, believing she was doing so with the man who would soon become her husband. Months went by and Warda became more and more attached to Muhammad. But Muhammad himself was no longer as interested as before. He started to talk to her less and avoided meeting her. Warda sensed this change, but she refused to believe that Muhammad could be exploiting her. In June 2007, a major development occurred in Warda's life. A young man named Ahmed Said Nassar Hussein, 22 years old, went to Warda's family home. Ahmed was a scrap metal trader. He had money and owned a ready apartment in the village of Arab al-Hisar in the city of El Saf. Because of his work in the scrap trade, Ahmed traveled through many areas and Bulak el-Dakru was one of them. On one of those occasions, he saw Warda in the street and was very impressed by her. He asked about her and her family and learned that she came from a respectable household with good origins. Ahmed decided to formally propose for Warda's hand in marriage. He went to her family and introduced himself with complete clarity and honesty. He told them that he wanted to marry Warda. Warda's family were very pleased with Ahmed. He represented everything parents could wish for their daughter. A respectable man who came through the door properly and officially. Someone with work, money, and a future. Clearly serious and not playing games. Ahmed left them his phone number and all his information and told them to take their time to think and ask about him as much as they wanted and that he would wait for their response. When Warda's parents asked her opinion about Ahmed, Warda asked them for some time to think. That same day, Warda met Muhammad and told him everything that had happened. Deep in her heart, she was hoping Muhammad would tell her that he would quickly come and propose to her. But Muhammad's response shocked Warda. He simply said, "Congratulations," and told her to agree to the marriage as long as the man was respectable and had money and that they could continue their relationship even after she got married. Those words struck Warda like a thunderbolt. She realized that Muhammad truly didn't love her and that all he ever wanted was pleasure and a forbidden relationship with no interest at all in marrying her. Unfortunately, at first, Varta tried to convince herself to do the right thing. She rejected Muhammad's proposal and told him she would cut off all contact with him completely. She returned home and told her family that she agreed to marry Ahmed. Her family were overjoyed and informed Ahmed of her acceptance. Indeed, within just 2 days, Ahmed came with his family and the engagement was held officially. The period between the engagement and the wedding was only 2 months. Ahmed was a serious man and eager to move forward with his life with Warda. In August 2007, exactly in the middle of the month, the wedding took place. Warda moved from Bulak El Dakru to her husband Ahmed's apartment in the village of Arab Al-Hisar in the city of El Saf. The apartment was in a large house. Ahmed and Warda lived on the second floor, while Ahmed's brother Hussein lived with his wife on the first floor. Ahmed treated Warda extremely well. He loved her, cared about her, and wanted to make her happy and comfortable. During the first 2 weeks after their marriage, Warda truly felt at ease, and she kept telling herself that she had made the right choice, that she had forgotten Muhammad and everything that had happened between them. But the devil had other plans. After only about 2 weeks of marriage, Warda was sitting alone at home when the phone suddenly rang. She picked it up and found that it was Muhammad calling her. Muhammad claimed that he just wanted to check on her, but in reality, he wanted to see whether Warda was still emotionally attached to him and whether he could exploit her again or not. Unfortunately, instead of refusing to talk to him or hanging up the phone in his face, Warda welcomed the call warmly. She began telling him about her new life, how she wasn't happy, and how she constantly thought about him. Muhammad realized that Warda was still weak in front of him and that he could still control her. At the end of the call, he told her that he would keep calling her from time to time to check on her. And indeed, the calls began to increase. Her husband Ahmed would leave early every day for work and return late, and Warda took advantage of that time to talk to Muhammad. Time passed, and by September 2007, Warda had been married for about 2.5 to 3 months. Yet her heart and mind were still occupied with Muhammad. In late August 2007, Muhammad began making bolder requests. He told her that he wanted to see her and that he wanted to come to her home. At first, Varta refused, but not because she feared sin or betrayal. No, she refused because she was afraid someone might see them, especially since her brother-in-law, Hussein, lived on the first floor and could see Muhammad at any moment. But Muhammad had a solution to that problem. He suggested that they get rid of Ahmed, kill him, and then, after a year had passed since his death, they would get married officially and normally after he had prepared himself financially. He told her that no one would suspect a thing. The real catastrophe was that Warda agreed to this idea. Not only did she agree, but she also suggested the details herself and began planning the murder. During that period, specifically in the last days of August 2007, something significant happened in the village of Arab al-Hasr where Warda lived with her husband. A major fight broke out. More accurately, a violent clash between the residents of Arab al-Hasr and those of a nearby village called Arab Gamaza. This was not an ordinary fight. It involved firearms. People were killed. Others were injured, and a blood feud was born between families from the two villages. The situation was serious and dangerous. And although the police intervened, the spirit of revenge remained among the people. Warda saw this conflict as a golden opportunity. She called Muhammad and told him that they should kill Ahmed, and then claimed that people from Arab Giza were responsible, framing it as an act of revenge. Muhammad liked the idea very much. He and Warda began planning the details of the crime. The plan seemed clear and well thought out to them. Muhammad began carrying out his part. He went and bought sleeping pills and also purchased a syringe from a pharmacy. Warda went to the market and bought a new sharp knife. Sunday, September 2nd, 2007 was set as the day to carry out the crime. Muhammad arrived in the city of El Saf at around 9 p.m. He agreed with Warda that he would leave the sleeping pills and the empty syringe in a bag at a specific location near the house, and that she would go down and pick up the bag. Warda did exactly that. She went down, took the bag, and returned to the apartment. Muhammad went and sat at a cafe in the area some distance away from the house so that no one would see him or notice his presence. At around 1000 p.m. Warda put the sleeping pills into a glass of juice for Ahmed and told him to drink it. Ahmed drank the juice innocently without knowing that his wife was plotting his murder. About an hour later, Ahmed began to feel extremely drowsy. He went to lie down on his bed and fell into a deep sleep due to the sleeping pills. Warda called Muhammad and told him that the way was clear. At around 12:30 after midnight, Muhammad arrived at Ahmed's house. He entered the apartment and Warda led him to the bedroom. Ahmed was sleeping on the bed, in a deep sleep, snoring from the effect of the sleeping pills. Muhammad took out the empty syringe and began trying to inject air into Ahmed's vein. But while he was doing that, the needle pricked Ahmed, and Ahmed felt the pain even while asleep. Ahmed suddenly woke up and opened his eyes, finding himself in a real nightmare. He saw his wife standing next to him and a strange man holding his arm, trying to inject him with something. In that moment, Ahmed understood that his wife was betraying him and that they were trying to kill him. Ahmed tried to get up from the bed quickly and tried to scream and call for help. But Muhammad was faster. Muhammad threw the syringe on the ground, lunged at Ahmed, grabbed his neck with both hands, and began strangling him with all his strength. Ahmed tried to resist. He tried to push Muhammad's hands away from his neck. At that moment, Warda did what no one expected. She went and grabbed one of the knives she had bought and began stabbing her husband with it. When Ahmed tried to move and get away from her, Warda stabbed him in the back as well. Blood began to pour heavily from Ahmed and he started to weaken little by little. Muhammad was still holding his neck and strangling him forcefully. When Muhammad felt that Ahmed had completely weakened, he took the knife from Ward's hand and continued the attack. He stabbed him in the neck and all over his body. He wanted to be absolutely sure that Ahmed was dead and that there was No chance he would regain consciousness. After about 5 minutes of struggle, Ahmed died. After that, Mohammed brought a metal object and struck Warda lightly on the head. The blow was not strong, but it was enough to cause a small wound and draw some blood. Then he brought a rope and tied Varta with it, tying her hands behind her back. Of course, the tying was not very tight. It was only for show. Then Mohammed took the gold jewelry she was wearing and took her mobile phone so they could claim that it had been a robbery. Before leaving, he told Water to wait about half an hour. Then start screaming and calling out to Hussein. He told her to stick to the story they had agreed on. That people from Arab Gamaza were the ones who came and did this. Warda remained tied in the bedroom next to her husband Ahmed's body, drowned in his blood. She waited about half an hour, then began screaming at the top of her lungs. Hussein woke up in terror. He heard Warda screaming and crying for help. He jumped out of bed quickly, got dressed, and ran up to the second floor. He found the apartment door open, rushed inside, and found Warda tied up, her head injured and bleeding. Hussein quickly untied the rope binding Warda and asked her what had happened. Warda began crying loudly and told him that people had broken into the apartment, assaulted her, tied her up, and stolen her gold and her phone. She said she heard Ahmed fighting with them and recognized from their words that they were from Arab Gamaza. Then Ahmed's voice disappeared and she didn't know where he was. Hussein entered his brother's room and found Ahmed lying on the floor in a pool of blood. His body covered with stab wounds from every direction. Hussein began calling out to the people and neighbors. The neighbors quickly gathered. One of the neighbors called the police and within minutes, police cars arrived at the scene. From the very moment the chief of investigation saw the crime scene, he felt that something was not right. Many things were illogical. First, there were no signs of forced entry or breakage on the door or windows. This meant that whoever entered the apartment either came in while the door was open or was let in by someone inside. Second, Warda, who was supposed to have been attacked and beaten, clear's throat, had very minor injuries on her head, nothing like the injuries of someone who had actually been assaulted. Third, the number of stab wounds on Ahmed's body was horrifying. More than 40 stab wounds. This was not the method of a simple robbery or even a revenge killing. This was the method of someone who felt intense hatred toward the victim. The chief of investigations began asking Warda detailed questions. He asked her exactly what happened, how the men entered, what they did, and what they said. Warda told her story confidently. She said that 3 men had entered the apartment, that they were masked, that they beat her and tied her up, and that she heard one of them say this was revenge against Ahmed's family, and that they were from the village of Arab Gamaza. The chief of investigations listened, feeling that she was lying. But at that point, he had no concrete evidence. For that reason, the forensic team moved quickly. The first thing they did was examine the landline phone and Request from the telephone company. The details of calls made to and from that line over the past few days. They discovered that the last call made from the house phone was around 10 o'clock p.m. on Sunday, September 2nd, about 3 or 4 hours before the crime. That call was made to a specific mobile number. Investigators requested the details of that number from the mobile phone company and discovered that it was registered to a young man named Mohammed Hassan Mahmoud, whose address was in the Bulak El Dakro area. The chief of investigations immediately ordered Mohammed to be summoned for questioning and sent a security force to Bulak El Dakro to bring him in. At around 4:00 a.m., the police raided Mohammed's home and told him that he was wanted for questioning in a murder case. Mohammed tried to remain composed and appear calm. He told them that he knew nothing about any murder case and that he had been at home all night. But when the officers looked at his hands, they found many cuts and scratches, fresh injuries, whose blood had not yet dried. The officers searched Mohammed and found very suspicious items: women's gold, jewelry, and a mobile phone. They escorted Mohammed to the police station. When he arrived, the chief of investigations personally received him. The chief of investigation showed Mohammed the gold and the phone they had found and asked him, "Are these yours?" Mohammed replied, "Yes, they're mine." The chief of investigation said, "All right, can you tell me what the number of this phone is?" Mohammed became confused and couldn't answer. He tried to give a random number, but of course, it was incorrect. The chief of investigation said, "This phone isn't yours, Mohammed. This phone belongs to Warda, the wife of Ahmed, who was murdered, and this gold belongs to her as well." Mohammed was shocked and began to tremble. He tried to deny it. The chief of investigation said, "And we also know that you've been calling Warda for several days. We know that you were in Elsaf last night. And we know that the wounds on your hands are from the struggle that happened between you and Ahmed when you were killing him." This was a psychological tactic by the chief of investigations, and it successfully trapped the killer. Mohammed completely collapsed. He realized the game was over and that there was no point in denying it anymore, and he confessed to everything. At the same time, Warda was in another office at the station giving her statement. When the officers told her that Mohammed had been arrested and had confessed to everything, Warda collapsed as well. She confessed to her role in the crime. The forensic report confirmed that Ahmed died as a result of severe bleeding caused by multiple stab wounds to vital parts of his body, and that the number of penetrating stab wounds exceeded 40. In November 2007, the prosecution referred Mohammed and Warda to trial on charges of premeditated murder. The trial began in early 2008. The prosecution presented all the evidence against them: confessions, medical reports, call records, witness testimonies, everything. In July 2008, the court issued its verdict, sentencing Mohammed and Warda to death by hanging. In 2009, the sentence was actually carried out. Mohammed and Warda were executed by hanging at Alcanada prison. This is a deeply painful story, one that shows how betrayal and treachery can lead a person to the most horrific crimes. We must choose our path in life with extreme care and stay away from the path of sin and betrayal, because the ending is always tragic. We must respect those who love and respect us and never betray or deceive them. And with that, today's episode comes to an end. If this is your first time watching the channel, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell so you receive all new updates. Wait for me in a new episode. Goodbye.